Bum ba da bum 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 ba bum ba bum 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 ba ba bum. How are they gonna tease us, man? They're tickling our teeth. I finally got the opportunity to sit down and binge a secret level or the secret level or secret level on Amazon Prime Video yesterday. And I actually watched it twice. I watched each episode twice just to get a clear understanding of what visuals I really admire and which visuals I didn't admire in the show, right? So this is just my perspective on what I witnessed or what I watched. A few disclaimers before I get into this video and break down all of the episodes. The art that you see being made to the side is actually me working on my current painting. Actual art takes a really long time to complete, and I can work on something for weeks on end just to get it to where I want it to be. More than likely, my art will outlast me possibly by hundreds of years. So I want to put everything I got into each and every one of my paintings. So it is not the same video that I keep reusing every video. It is actually the progression. So this is actually my studio. Welcome. Another disclaimer, I am not familiar with the lore of every single episode that was shown in this series. So bear with me if I get some things incorrect while talking about your favorite episode. We all have our different fandoms. Secret level. So this show was a visual marvel. I love 3D visuals, and just being completely honest, if it weren't for gaming, I would have never went into art. Some of my first drawings were of video game characters. So games have always inspired me and continue to inspire me. I've seen visuals or 3D visuals go from the NES to the PS5, and that shit is insane to have witnessed the entire timeline. And I did catch a little bit of the Atari and the original consoles, right? Like I remember seeing those in the thrift store as a child. So I have been living alongside the gaming industry for a long time. Never worked in it, but I have witnessed many things. So Episode 15, Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I must admit, I have been slowly warming up to the fantasy genre. When I was younger, I didn't like the fantasy stuff because I thought it was just overused, right? Anything that's overused, I tend to I cringe towards it. But then you realize with age that everything is slowly being overused. But because of games, I've realized that there are different ways to use the fantasy universe or the Tolkien-esque universe to tell your story. And games are one of those things that I can appreciate. And because of games, I've actually grown to love or grown to appreciate the medieval fantasy stories and worlds. So in Dungeons and Dragons, one of the things that I really love is actually seeing the party. Now, the party being the mage, the druid, the paladin, one of my favorite classes. I used to think paladins were so lame, but man, yeah, I've grown to really love that class. The dopest thing I actually saw in the Dungeons and Dragons episode is actually the use of the dragon. I think the dragon in this episode is very gorgeous. Now, mind you, I am a sucker for golden dragons because of Monster Hunter and the gold Rathian. And yeah, I just think the dragon in a secret level really displays how epic we can make a gold dragon look, especially with all of the reflections going on. I saw some of the most beautiful light being reflected off of this dragon, and some scenes they show red being reflected off of the gold, and it just looked, man, it just looks incredible. It just looks incredible. And this is why I think it's important that we, especially artists, use our entertainment and our enjoyment of entertainment as inspiration. It should be a never-ending cycle. Be inspired, create. Be inspired again, create more. And then it's just a never-ending loop until your last breath. So that Dungeons and Dragons episode was pretty damn epic. And big ups to the monk. Episode 14, Sifu. So I didn't get a chance to play Sifu. but I immediately recognized that art style. It's as if they took the Sifu art style and just added more to it. And honestly, now I really want to play Sifu. One of the cool things I think, one of the dopest things about this episode is the fact that they switched art styles, I think 2 or 3 times in the episode. So they went from the beautiful Sifu art style, the animated art style, and they switched it to like a black and white art style with a touch of red, you know, for blood, because it's a very violent episode. And then in another episode, it's like this really cool fall through the ground, floating in consciousness, and the consciousness is symbolized with red. And as we know in Sifu, every time you get your ass kicked and come back, you age, you get older, so you get more wisdom, more insight to bust ass another day. So seeing all of the, and I'm gonna call them Sifus, because I know the main character is not named Sifu, but I haven't played the game. We see all the Sifus. We see all of them standing around and communicating with each other. I think that was pretty cool. So this episode was very intriguing to me, and it actually made me want to play a game. So see, that's the reoccurring theme that I'm starting to realize after watching the show twice, right? And I'll get more into that later. But we want more, essentially. I noticed. I had a feeling of more after watching each episode 2 times. Episode 13, New World. Okay, so I'm not really familiar with New World, but this was a very endearing episode to me. My favorite visual in this whole entire episode was actually the lighting. The lighting during different times of the day. I think the lighting was done really well. I feel like the lip syncing on this episode is a little off, and that's one of the things that drives me nuts about where we are in the 3D era or whatever, in the 3D-ness of everything, or in 3D visual advancements. It's like we can't get it like just right so it can actually truly look lifelike. You know, there's always something off, and I'm wondering if it's like a delay in the motion capturing. So the faces look really good in this episode, and I actually really like the episode, right? But there's just something's off. I can't put my finger on it, but I thought it was a fantastic episode nonetheless. Again, the lighting of the island and the characters look really good. The ending lighting, that last scene, that shot signifies friendship. Couldn't have been lit better, and I just think it's a great episode. It's a pretty good episode. Now, Unreal Tournament. This is episode 12. Okay, now I must admit, I'm not really familiar with the lore of Unreal, right? But I thought this episode was pretty good, except for I know Unreal they have other characters, and this might be a prequel to what actually takes place in the Unreal Tournament, but I just wanted to see more of the actual citizens. I know we saw the crowd, right? But we only saw the dude with the lines going down his face and the lady. We didn't really see many other characters, and if they did show a character, it was like for a split second. There's this one dude that like crushed a robot, and I thought he looked pretty cool, but it was only like a flash. Like we didn't even get that much. And again, this is what I'm talking about. These episodes, they're doing what E3 and trailers do to us gamers. And I think I'm starting to see a trend here with this show. It was a cool episode. I thought the robots, the scenes with the robots were pretty good. I think the actual mechs or the actual robots themselves, they look okay. They're worker minor robots, so I'm not expecting them to have, you know, like stellar design. They look, I've seen many robots, so they look okay. But the way they animate, I really like the way they animate, especially later on in the episode when we see a robot actually deflecting bullets with his forearm. I thought the animation was pretty spot on. It was a decent episode. And kudos to the announcer voice, because I know that's actually significant within the realm of Unreal Tournament. So is that related to the Unreal Engine? Put it in the comment section. Okay. Episode 11, Warhammer. Okay, now this episode is fire. So my best friend, my hombre, my brethren, right? he has been going back and forth with playing Space Marine, Warhammer Space Marine. Now, I'm not familiar with the Warhammer universe, but I know that's a pretty deep, broad universe with a lot of lore. And I heard a lot of the lore is actually crazy. But that being said, he has been going back and forth with Warhammer. So because he's going back and forth with Warhammer, I'm also going back and forth with the whole Warhammer thing, right? Because I think the game looks fantastic. Warhammer Space Marines 2. The first one I did play, but it's been so long ago and I've played so many games that I think I just kind of finished the campaign and moved on. But I remember having an enjoyable experience with the original Space Marine. But with this episode, I feel like it's a great prequel trailer or prequel movie to what takes place later on. And I think the setup is really good. I really like the visual of the little kid walking into the darkness with the blade behind him with the blood coming down. I think it's a very strong aesthetic, especially with that angle of him walking towards the danger fearlessly. I think that it's just a great visual. There's another scene where one of the Marines in his suit or in his power armor, I'm gonna say power armor because I'm used to Fallout, like runs through a raider effortlessly. The car starts to like dismantle around him, and it just looks insane. And another thing that I really liked about this episode was actually the use of fog. Yeah, everything was foggy, but I like the fact that we can still see everything and everything is still clear. And another thing that I really appreciate about the episode is the fact that in all of the action scenes, we can clearly see what's going on. There's this weird thing, this weird phenomena in a lot of movies nowadays where whenever action's going on, it's very hard to see what's hitting what, right? But in Warhammer, it's animated so well. The visuals are done so well in this episode that everything is just very, very clear. I love the change in aesthetics, especially when that creature, whatever creature that is, the one that flies around and pinpoints your fear, the one with the flap with the giant eye, that thing looks incredible. The change in aesthetic when they enter the consciousness, and I love in media or in entertainment when consciousness is being shown, because every time it's shown, it's almost like a psychedelic trip that we can kind of all relate to. So this thing is playing on fear. So everything is like this like oil that's like dripping, kind of like candle wax, and in a aesthetically pleasing but also a kind of disturbingly gross way because it's being melted, like so everything has this melted look, right? And I thought about it and I said, you know what if you saw like people you love? Imagine if this thing entered your consciousness and then like everyone you love starts like melting like candles. That would be horrifying. So I like the fact that they picked that aesthetic to represent fear, and I just think it's beautiful. Another thing that I really appreciate about the Space Marines episode is actually the alien blood or the demon blood or whatever, the neon blue with the footsteps. How did they make footsteps look so goddamn beautiful? Man, the blue and the black, and then it's like it's just the inverse, the trail of alien blood as the Marines march on. I just think it's stellar. It's stellar. One of my favorite episodes. This is definitely a star. Okay, so episode 10. I hope I don't skip any of these because I got like chicken scratch and I hope I don't skip anything. But anyway, 10, Pac-Man. Okay, so wow, this episode I think for me was the most visually pleasing one, simply because it is the most distinct. I think it's one of the most distinct episodes out of all the episodes. And I just really love a really good cell shaded-esque art style, like what we get in like Persona and Ni no Kuni and what you would see in like Arcane. I just really like that 3D, 2D aesthetic, right? And I wish more games will actually use it. I know it's not an uncommon art style, but still, I really like when it's done well. So seeing that art style along with the incredible use of different textures it's very inspiring. So if you look at the background, you'll notice sometimes you'll see a kind of polka dot pattern, and then other times you see a cross hatching pattern. And it's really nice because these patterns actually create a really wonderful texture over the whole episode. And it's very subtle, but it's very effective. I like when small things make big impacts, right? And because I feel like every painting is like that. Like every painting is just a series of different brushstrokes that you're putting on to make a grand image. So I really appreciate those little nuances within art styles. Another thing that I like how gory, and this is gonna sound weird, I like how gory Pac-Man, the Pac-Man episode was, because I've seen like the Pac-Man animated shows and we've seen Pac-Man in the arcades, and I've never once thought like, dang, what would happen if Pac-Man goes vile? Like what happens if he goes just nuts? I've never thought about blood in Pac-Man. So to see it in this episode and to see how grotesque the episode became, I really admired that. I really admired that. It really made something that I didn't think I would appreciate, that I actually appreciate. Another thing that I really like about it is the fact that Pac-Man, or what sounds to be Miss Pac-Man, the little gold orb that's floating around, I like the fact that it kind of takes on like a Navi role, you know, Navi from Zelda. It reminds me of Gladios, and I think that's what Gladius. Is it Gladius? Gladios. It reminds me of Gladios from Portal. And I just think it's really cool. That's a good episode. I really like that episode. Strength through repetition. That's what I'm doing over here. Strength, or creative strength through repetition. Just like in the gym, same thing, same principle applies. Okay, so the next one, episode 9, I'm not really familiar with. Crossfire. Okay, to be honest, this was probably one of my least episodes, and I'm gonna be super biased here. I would have preferred a Metal Gear Solid episode to this, but Crossfire is actually a major success. I just don't play shooters so that much. I mean, I do love shooters, but I still think it's a decent episode. It's just, I just couldn't relate to it. And I must admit, I did like the effects of the hurricane and the weather effects. I thought it was pretty cool. But I feel like I've seen more realistic graphics in terms of the military aesthetic. I feel like I've seen better, you know? So this episode was good, but I just didn't like it as much as the others. It was okay. And the guy, the hostage, the guy being carried or whatever, or protected, his head is a little bit too large for his body. And that's something that we see happening often within the 3D space. And I think, again, it's the fusion of like mocap and rendering that mocap into a cohesive art style. I think there's something that's off. And I'm not a game developer nor a 3D artist, so I have no idea. So those of you who are 3D artists, put it in the comment section. What's off? Why some of the characters look like they have massive heads and tiny bodies? Proportionally, I feel like something's not gluing properly. Episode 8. Now, this is also one of my favorite episodes. I have not played Fires of Rubicon yet. I plan to definitely play that and hopefully enjoy it. I like Armored Core. I think Armored Core is cool. And I just so happen to also like Johnny Silverhand and Neo and Keanu Reeves, right? I feel like all of Keanu Reeves' movies, anywhere Keanu Reeves makes a presence, he is in fact Neo that escaped his matrix and ends up in other media and other series, right? So this is Neo and Johnny Silverhand in Armored Core, and he is equally as badass as in those. He even has a little bit of the John Wickness in there. I binged all of John Wick. I highly recommend doing that. It is almost life-changing. So in Armored Core, right, the visuals in this thing reminds me so much of Cyberpunk. I love Cyberpunk, but I just couldn't get Johnny Silverhand out of my mind while watching this episode. And I watched it twice, and both times I watched it, I just kept thinking, man, what would V say? What would V say? But anyway, there's a nice grungy feel to this episode. It's very dirty, and I like that. especially when dealing with mechs. A lot of times when mechs are shown, tend to be on the cleaner side of things, like the Gundam mechs. When you take mechs, especially these type of mechs, and you accompany the sheen incredible technology that goes into the mech, and then you take that and you put it next to a grungy, shitty world, I think it makes for a great aesthetic. And I really dig this episode. When the mechs start to fight each other and Johnny Silverhand is up there fighting the mechs, right? It just looks stunning. The sky combat flying around, I wanted more of it. It was too short. You guys need to get back to work and make these episodes longer. Another thing that I really appreciate about the Armored Core episode is the use of dynamic angles. We get to see dynamic angles through and through this whole entire episode. There is a scene with a cockroach, and they make the cockroach look so cool as Johnny Silverhand is passing out. And we see this dynamic angle being pulled off at multiple spots in the episode. And not to mention the best part of the episode, the incredible finger kill. That shit was amazing. Head busting like a grape. Okay, next episode. This is an episode of contention for me. So the Outer Wilds, right? The Outer Wilds, sorry. That's the game I actually do like. The Outer Worlds is a game that I actually completed, but it kind of did the same thing Starfield did for me. It was okay. You know, it wasn't a bad game, but it just didn't resonate with me the way I wanted it to resonate with me, especially because I am a sucker for all things outer space. My favorite series is Mass Effect. So yeah, the game was alright, but this episode was insane. It was a really good episode. Somehow, some way, I really connected with the main character. Even though I thought his head was a little large, I thought that character, there's something very like sweet heart about him. You know how you meet people and you just feel bad for them, but you don't know why. Like, they could be completely fine, right? But they just have a face. And you're just like, hey, man, I just feel sorry for you, man. Like, do good in life, you know what I mean, right? So he has that, like, it's like a bashfulness to him, you know? And I really liked him. But as we know, watching this episode, things don't turn out too good for our protagonist, right? And as we know, he becomes a test subject, and these tests look incredible, look just as incredible as they are horrific, right? So every single test that this guy went through, I remember thinking to myself, man, that looks incredible, and it looks incredibly painful. So we see acid falling on skin. We get a nice visual of that. We see our test subjects going down in a vat of substance, a lot of them drowning, unfortunately. And I really liked how the robots carry the one test subject across the screen. I thought that was pretty clever. A cool thing that I really appreciate about this episode in particular is how lighthearted it was while also being gruesome and grotesque. That takes a lot of skill to do, and they actually really pulled it off. And I feel like this team, they know, and I don't even know if it's multiple teams or if it's one team, but whoever's working on this and Love, Death, Robots, they have a really good, because I've seen the same thing in Love, Death, Robots, having something serious happen while keeping it comical and entertaining at the same time. Because this episode is so grim. I felt horrible after watching it both times, and I think there's some way they're making us relate to the characters, and I feel like a large part of that is the actual visuals that they managed to pull off, right? One thing that I really appreciate about this episode in particular is actually the lighting in the episode. I feel like the lighting is like spot on, especially in the end, like towards the end of the episode when it's dark and they're showing Lady Cleo or Auntie Cleo, whatever her name is, next to our suffering test subject, and the lighting that hits her face is incredible. So I feel like this visually, this is also one of the higher marks of this of this show, and I really appreciate the Outer Worlds. In fact, it's the Outer Wilds. The Outer Wilds is incredible, and the Outer Worlds is okay, right? Yes, I like Fallout, yes. And I like Fallout games, yes. So this episode actually got me more excited for the Outer Worlds 2. So I'll give it another shot, because if I play something and I don't like it, I don't like trash it, I'll just put it to the side, remember that I wasn't too fond of it, and move on to what I actually like. That's just how I move. Oh man, episode 6, here we go. Okay, so Mega Man is very nostalgic for me, right? Because Mega Man was actually one of the first exposures to Nintendo that I actually got, right? So when I was younger, I remember taking trips up to my cousin's house in New York, and I was blown away with all things NES, right? And because of Mega Man, seeing that as a child, it really did something. I don't know what it did, but every time I see Mega Man or I hear Mega Man, it reminds me of family, especially because Mega Man doesn't remind me of myself. It actually reminds me of my little brother. That's why I always refer to him as Blue. So I'm very nostalgic when it comes to Mega Man. Okay, so this episode is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. And it got me thinking, man, like, it's such a shame that such a gorgeous episode is only 8 minutes long. Okay, this is my main problem with the secret level, right? And this is gonna be a little ranty, but I gotta say it. This episode is incredible, and it is also incredibly frustrating. Okay, so seeing the suit, the iconic blue suit being strapped on to our Rockman, and not seeing that kid in action is heart torturing, right? And you know, the second time I watched it, I just happened to see the Capcom logo in the credits, and I thought to myself, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Like, I've played all of the Mega Mans. I've played every last Mega Man game, right? And when you hear that theme pop in and you see him standing on top of the buildings, I actually watched this episode a total of like 4 times because I just wanted more. Seeing Bomb Man and Dr. Light, it's just, oh my gosh, man. I mean, even Mega Man without his armor, I think that character model is just insane. Dr. Light looks insane. This is actually my most loved episode and my most hated episode. So I want either a Mega Man TV show or a Mega Man movie, because I don't think we can pull this off on the PS5. We're gonna have to wait like 4 generations for this, man. Maybe next gen. Maybe next gen we'll get to these kind of visuals, but the visuals are just insane. I at least wanted one blaster shot. Like, give me just one blaster shot. Like, damn, man. Like, that episode left me so frustrated, but also incredibly happy as well. So did any of the episodes have that effect on you? Because I'm probably sure it probably happened to fans of other series. But yeah, I think that's the main problem with Secret Level. There's not enough, you know? And it's wild because it's like, there's so much potential. You know, there's so much potential, but I want all the episodes to be movies. I will watch all of them. But then again, you know, everything is like millions of dollars to make. So I guess I can't, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Okay, so number 5, Exodus Odyssey. I don't know what the hell Exodus is. I looked it up and it says it's supposed to be like a Mass Effect type game, and that has me really intrigued because I love Mass Effect, right? But this episode was actually really good. This is also one of my favorite episodes, not because of, you know, the visuals necessarily or anything like that, but I really enjoyed the story. The whole time dilation thing, I really like. I cannot wait to watch Interstellar for a 3rd time. I'm supposed to do that, I think, later on today with my family. So to see time dilation done in this episode, I think it's really cool. So the reason why I think it's really cool is because we get to see a character go from young and energetic to old and frail, and I like to see that transition in characters. Quite often in a lot of the media, we don't get to see characters age like that, right? Sifu also did this in its episode, but for some reason it just hit different in this episode, and I think it's because we saw the young character turn into a frail elderly woman, and I just like that visual shift. I think it's fantastic. Not to mention everything out of space looked really well, right? Looked really good. All the episodes looked good, but I just feel like at this point we've gotten to the point where we're kind of being spoiled on great visuals in pretty much all media. In fact, we're being so spoiled that we just kind of take it for granted. But I'm pretty sure a lot of work went into the visuals of all of these episodes, because just me making one painting, man, like my finger literally has shifted, and I'm not giving you guys a middle finger, I'm just showing you my fingers. The bone in my finger is literally shifted because I do a lot of this, right? So creating something is actually very difficult. So that's just why I really have to admire things like The Secret Level that actually take creating great visuals seriously. So Exodus Odyssey was probably my most heartfelt episode, along with The Outer Worlds. So episode 4, Spelunky. This episode, I'm not much of a Spelunky fan, and yes, I do like the visuals in the episode, but I just couldn't relate to it. To me, it's just kind of like, I don't know, I watched the episode twice, and I couldn't get into the episode. Something just didn't hit for me with this Spelunky episode for some reason. And I understand, like, a lot of people like Spelunky, but I just couldn't get into it, man. I'm just not a spelunker, man. I'm just not a spelunker. But it's a good tribute to roguelites. You know, I'm playing Balatro. I'm still playing Balatro. Incredible roguelite. So, and I want to play Nine Souls at some point, but I heard that game is incredibly hard. So, depending on the frustration levels, we'll see what happens. Okay, now episode 3, Concord. Now I kind of zoned out during the Concord episode as well, except for in the beginning of the episode when they show the cool way the explorer or whatever comes to his demise. He goes through light speed, and then he just kind of explodes into a asteroid, and I think that was pretty cool. Another scene, they show him just out in the void of space, and they show him like they show him with like rigor mortis or whatever. I think that's pretty cool. One thing that I really did like about this episode in particular, there's a scene where they're going through light speed and this flesh of their skin starts to like undulate and warp and spiral, and I thought that was a pretty cool visual. But outside of that, I didn't really connect with the episode that much. I know Concord has a lot of drama. Yeah, it's the biggest failure in gaming and so forth. And I don't know, maybe that has a little something to do with it because I know that information. And this is why I don't like to follow stuff in gaming news or whatever, because I feel like it's just all complaining, and it just leaves me with a sour taste, and I just can't. I gotta make something. I'm getting hot in this robe. But overall, I think Concord visually, it's a very beautiful episode. R.I.P. Concord. Okay, so number 2, Honor of Kings. Now, this, I think, again, is up there with the best looking episodes. I really love the city. The city morphing is incredible. Anything morphing in this episode is amazing. I'm not familiar with the Honor of Kings. I heard it's a MOBA, so I don't play MOBA, so I wouldn't know. But the episode I still thought was gorgeous, right? The scene where the young man meets the elder man or the sage, and that whole scene when they're in that is so, that whole section where they're sitting in front of, what is that? Is that a gold table? What the hell is that game? That whole section of them kneeling in front of the board game, right? That whole section was just fantastic. They do so many interesting things. It's kind of hard to pick out just one in particular. I love that the sage, he can just shift and shift into like a younger version of the main character, you know, into the hobo out on the streets. His mask was very beautiful. I love the look of his mask. I think it looks really well. The color tone, the colors I think are really nice. That the tan with the gold with the teal, I think it's spot on. It's a beautiful episode. But again, I'm not really familiar with the lore here. And let me know if you guys had this similar phenomena of not knowing the lore to most of Secret Level. But I mean, honestly, it is what it is. You know, it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. The Magic City. Magic City was quite magical. One thing that I really liked about the Honor of King episodes is there's a domino scene that they use as a little bit of exposition, and that scene is incredible, especially on a visual level. It looks fantastic seeing everything topple over, and it makes me wonder. It makes me kind of want to see how it was actually made, but I am not in the 3D space, so I probably would have no idea what was going on anyway. And last but not least, my most hated episode of Secret Level. I think this episode visually looked really good. It was really nice. But I just felt like it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of one big ass advertisement for Sony, and it's not because it was necessarily an advertisement, but it was because they freaking left out the one guy, the one little bot that literally won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. They left out Astrobot. How the hell can you leave out Astrobot? How can you leave out Astrobot? Now he's an icon, right? Now this guy, I remember playing him on the VR, and I have Astrobot as my next game. But it's just, I feel like more, if you're gonna go Sony, you gotta put more in this. So it can't just be Shadow of the Colossus. Yes, we love Shadow of the Colossus, right? I love seeing the Colossi walk over the city, right? But at this point, I think we're all familiar with, except for the Journey character. The Journey character is cool, but we're so familiar with seeing these characters. Like, my eyes kind of rolled when I saw Kratos, because I was like, man, Kratos, he looks so out of place in this episode. He does not belong. And in fact, I think that's one thing about this episode was when they take all of these different aesthetics and kind of just merge them together, it looks kind of forced. It looks kind of forced, right? It looks kind of forced. I feel like Sackboy looks like he belongs in the episode, but like the Helldivers, they're really cool to see. I'm glad, yes, freedom and whatever, but democracy now and stuff. But what do they say? Democracy and freedom. But again, I just feel like the meshing of everything, I don't know, it just left me with more to be desired, right, from this episode. Like, I thought, like, wouldn't it be cool if instead of having a stupid ass glowing starfish, you can have Astrobot on the girl's shoulder as she's like going through whatever she's going through? I think that would have been much better. Like, Astrobot could have been such a great addition to this episode. It's such a huge glaring miss for me. You know, it's like, damn, man, like how, like, no Crash Bandicoot. I'm not even a Crash Bandicoot fan, but if we're talking Sony, how can you not mention Crash Bandicoot and Ratchet & Clank? I don't think Ratchet & Clank was ever in this, you know? I don't think there was anything Ratchet & Clank. Yeah, but it was a weird one. I feel like it was an episode full of wasted potential. And honestly, a lot of effort went into these episodes. So I'm just saying, I feel like another series could have been represented instead of like an ad for Sony, right? I feel like at this moment in time, and this might be because we're just so used to seeing these characters over and over that we're kind of like, oh, we get it. But I don't know, maybe to those who are not familiar with Sony and PlayStation, they will probably appreciate this episode. Well, that's my take on the Secret Level. What's your take? What do you think about the show? So this is just like a one-off video. I typically talk about the visuals within the games I'm currently currently playing or the games that I've finished. If you have no idea who I am, my name is Jabulani Ori, artist extraordinaire, and I love to talk about the visuals in games. If you would like to see more of my work, you can head over to my website, jahbu.com, just jabu.com. If you would like to follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you can find me at the handle jahbu_art. So I am in my So I am currently in my cozy vacation mode. So I've been like chilling hard. I've been enjoying not being overstimulated by responsibilities. So I'm having a blast. I'm just so chill. This is a chill video. I'm drinking coffee. This is a chill video. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time, one love. Peace.